Hello and welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, your daily guide to decoding current affairs with clarity, depth, and UPSC focus. It's July 14th, 2025, and today's edition brings two high impact analysis topics for Mains 2025. First, we begin with the changing landscape of employment in the country. Then, we assess India's carbon trading targets and our global climate commitments. Next, in the simplified section for Prelims 2026, we shall be covering a wide range of topics that are extremely crucial for your prelims examination. So let's begin. Hello guys, I hope you all are doing well. Welcome back again to another day, another episode of The Analyst. So in the very beginning, we will be starting with a very important article from the Hindu with reference to our employment status in the country. And this article have a plethora of information, facts, and most importantly, the way forward we need to adopt if we want to ensure that India is on track to meet its employment targets in the country. Now, when we talk about the same, we have to talk about from the perspective of prelims, where we have the topics of economic and social development, where there have been so many instances in the PYQs related to the government schemes related to employment. Also, from the perspective of GS2, we need to look into the various welfare schemes that the government has taken to boost employment in the country. We have to also look into the various issues pertaining to the education sector, because when we talk about employment and skilling, they are both related to the educational sectors and also how we are utilizing our human resources as a country. Then at the end of the day, we have the GS3 topic of Indian economy and the variety of issues related to employment. And please do take care that there have been past instances of direct questions related to employment and the skilling initiatives. So that is where, this article by the authors is explaining so many data and the themes that we have pertaining to India's unemployment crisis. Now, according to so many reports which have been quoted in the article, let me just give you the sources here so that you can also do the same with your mains answers. And let me tell you, since such topics are in the news, there is a high probability of them being asked in your upcoming mains examination. And that is why the practice questions after each and every topic are extremely crucial for you all to follow. You can let me know in the comments about your answers or say some sections of those questions if you do not want to address them entirely in the comments, because I know that you have to type a lot, you have to think a lot. If you want to even answer a part of the same, you are welcome to do so in the comments. I will be giving you feedback based on your own opinions. Now, when we talk about the various themes, firstly, we'll be looking through the ILO report of 2024, wherein the ILO has prescribed that 83% of India's unemployed are actually from the youth. That is roughly from the age criteria of around 16 to 34-35 years of age. Now, Economic Survey 2023-24 is telling that only 50% of the graduates are job ready. Now, when we talk about the job ready aspect here, we generally means that, in an economy, there are so many jobs which are created. We can create the jobs in our agricultural sector. We can actually create the jobs in the manufacturing sector. We can create the jobs in the construction sector. But the most important thing that we have to keep in mind when we are talking about job creation, we always have to keep the future in mind. We have to always ask the questions as policymakers, as future bureaucrats, which you all shall be tomorrow. You all should be asking this at a personal level, that if at all, if I am actually talking about a project in my district, will that project create jobs right now? Or will that project be creating short-term jobs or long-term jobs? Generally, we have seen that various policymakers focus on the short-term aspect. That is, they can easily create jobs in the agricultural sector, or they can actually try to give jobs via the Manrega scheme, that is 100 days of works. But it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort to create future-ready skills and future-ready jobs, such as boosting the jobs in the formal sector, in the services sector, right? We can actually create more and more jobs if we talk about building artificial intelligence-ready workforce in the country. So these are the things that we have to keep in mind when we are talking about the policymakers' imperatives. Also, according to WEF's report, a very, very important report known as the Future of Jobs report, which is exactly the thing which I'm talking about, that AI and automation threaten jobs to the tune of 92 million by 2030. That means that AI And further, the artificial general intelligence, which so many companies in the entire world are trying to achieve. Even the recent Stargate project by OpenAI is envisaged as creating a mega factory for artificial intelligence. They are envisaging that most of the day-to-day activities performed by human beings can be easily be substituted firstly by machines and then by artificial intelligence. So that is why this level of people will be affected and in our country. So that is where we have to keep in mind that we must be doing something. Now, when we talk about various other issues also, when we talk about the various other themes within this article, now the author is talking about the issue of formalization of employment. Why this is an issue? Because 90% of the jobs in the country belong to the informal sector. Now there are various reports which tell that this number is as high as 95%, but we can roughly tell that around 90% of the people in the country are not employed in any formal organization. They do not receive any insurance, PF, or which we know as social security benefits. You have to understand over a period of time that 18 to 25 age groups are actually seeing more new subscribers with the EPFO. That means that maybe these new people are getting more jobs in the recent times. And the post-COVID trend, the COVID crisis saw so many unemployment issues, but we are steadily returning to the formal sector since 2022. That means obviously with more and more EPFO registrations, this is an indication that the formal job sector is increasing. But the authors are raising some concerns that these new jobs which are created, are they of good quality? Do have job stability? Are they having good wages or decent wages? Because even the low salaried people belonging to various organizations, they also have to file registrations with the EPFO. So are they getting enough salaries, or are their careers, having a longer period of job security? Next, when we are talking about the quality of jobs, quality of employment, the authors are highlighting that in the country we have an issue of more and more number of unemployability. That means that if there is a person who is working at your factory, that person is not possibly having the required skills for the future times. Now, when we talk about the job readiness or employability, we mean in the country as of now, we have only 50% of the youth who are job ready. That means that 75% of the people cannot actually send an email with attachment. 60% cannot perform simple copy-paste tasks. 90% struggle with formulas. That means in Excel, in Microsoft Words, and so many other aspects, they are actually lacking behind. This has also been highlighted via the third theme, that is the youth, or say the labor force in the country is not tech enabled. That means in the country and in the entire world, we can see over a period of time we are seeing more artificial intelligence skills which are needed. We need more coding skills. We need more amount of digital literacy skills. That thing is lagging behind. And also this is reflected by the WEF Future of Jobs Report 2025. That means that this report is telling about the fastest declining jobs by 2030 and the fastest growing jobs. As you can see, these are the top declining jobs. For example, jobs related to postal service clerks, bank tellers, data entry clerks, cashiers, or say administrative assistants, printing, accounting, bookkeeping, and so many other jobs you can see, they can become obsolete because most of these jobs in the present times can be done by computers, that can be totally automated using artificial intelligence, and these are the things which most of the AI companies are also focusing on right now. So that is why we have to focus more on the jobs which are having the fastest growing potential. For example, we need more Indians who are actually skilled in financial technology such as operating payment gateways or having knowledge on the various skills that are needed for the same, or big data, or AI and machine learning specialists, software and application developers, security management, particularly in the field of cyber security, because cyber security is actually known as one of the most fastest growing job domains in the entire world. Next, also the UI UX designers, or say Internet of Things specialists, even light truck or delivery service drivers. It is not always that the jobs of the future will be tech related. Some also will be manual, you have to understand that the logistics sectors of the country is going to increase. That is, the transportation, warehousing sectors will be increasing. That is why we need more of the people away from these perspectives to these jobs right now. And that is where you can understand that, this new jobs, or say the jobs of the futures, will be creating 170 million new jobs. Now that is actually a very good thing. But the main concern for India is that whether we can be able to learn those skills and adapt to these jobs or not. Right? And that is where we have to understand, even when we will be displacing some of the jobs related to technology, that is 92 million, which I told earlier. But still, the net effect that we are creating 7% more jobs by 2030. If you are going to the future ready job market, or if you are getting those kind of skills. Now, this was actually one of the other issue. Now, the final theme is about the informal sector dominance. Now, when we talk about the informal sector employment in the country, according to ILO report, that is around 90%. And when we talk about the salaried and the regular jobs, they are declining since 2018. And one of the reason for the same is also on the rise of the gig economy. Now, according to 2022 data, around 60,000 people are actually registered on gig platforms such as Ola, Uber, and various other workers. Now the actual number will be more if we talk about the various apps which actually have their registration with the database with reference to various indexes. Now when we talk about the gig economy, the workforce is also increasing over around 15%, and obviously when we talk about the recruiting cities, mainly these jobs are also attractive in tier 2 and tier 3 cities as opposed to tier 1 cities like Delhi, Chennai or Kolkata and so on. So this is where we have to understand that in the urban areas also the jobs are created, but mainly we have some support of the gig economy. Also we have a lot of contractual jobs over a period of time, due to which the actual level of formal jobs created are much low. As you can also see here, the informal sector, right, over a period of time is actually stagnant. That means around the same proportion of people which was earlier in the informal sector, it is still at that level. Right? Also, when we talk about the types of enterprises in the informal sector, we actually see that the most amount of informal sector is seen with reference to the own account enterprises. That means it can be a person who is selling vegetables on the streets, or say it can be some other enterprises who is having MSME of their own, but the laborers in those MSME or the numbers of the persons who are working is extremely less, or if at all they are working, they are not paid proper social security benefits, right? And also we can see the workers, the number of workers with reference to the various states. So this reflects the sorry state of informal job creation. Now that is where we have to look at various other issues also. Firstly, we have some mismatch between skills and the industry needs. That means 50% of the graduates are underemployed. We have to pause and think for a minute. If we have so many graduates in the country from various streams, even from the engineering background, from the non-engineering background, there are so many future ready jobs, but why are they not getting those kind of jobs? Why are they underemployed? Firstly, we have so many competition in the country due to huge population, but population should be actually a resource, right? We actually studied demographic dividend yesterday, right? And this is where we have to understand population is always a potential, not a burden. That means we are not able to skill them properly. Also, the courses which are taught at the graduate level, at the school level, these are outdated. These are not oriented with reference to the next generation of industry, that is industry 4.0, where we will be having automated jobs, but there should be someone who should be running the codes, or who should be maintaining those operations, who should be in the logistics sector. Or in the renewable energy, we have so many jobs which have been created, right? Be it the renewable power plants with reference to solar and wind, be it actually the expertise that we need in the nuclear energy, the expertise is lacking. Also, we cannot ignore women here because they have extremely low amount of female labor force participation. And here, also according to a recent report, you let me know in the comments what that report name was and what that actually talked about India's women in the labor force. Now, according to various other data also, mainly according to the economic survey data, we find that we have one of the highest STEM graduates in the entire world. That is around 43% of the women. But when we talk about the jobs here, right, that is around only 14%, and there is a huge gap when we compare across countries. While we have so many graduates, but the conversion from graduate to job or employment is actually very low for women. Also, there is a very weak amount of apprenticeship culture in the country. That means that apprentice is actually someone who is working with a guru or a master, right? For example, imagine an almari factory. So the almari factory will be having a very high skilled individual. Now the skilled individual will be thinking, okay, let me give 5-6 interns, and they will be helping me in my operations. So they are actually known as apprentice. Now in India, only 27.7 lakh people are there working as apprentices, and this is across the 5 years, even after a dedicated scheme known as National Apprentice Scheme, working in favor, where the central government actually gives some percentage of stipend in this matter. But despite that, we do not have too much of the same. Next, we also have fragmented skilling program. There are so many skilling programs in the country. We need to actually consolidate them, because only around 18% of the 1.37 crore, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana trainees are being placed, because, they are sometimes confused between the so many objectives. Next, there is also in the various schemes that we can see a prominent urban centric approach. That means only 10% of the rural workers have been able to get formal training. This is also according to the WF report. And at the end of the day, there is also lack of recognition for informal skills. Now imagine that there is a person who is repairing smartphones for 5 years. Now he wants to get a formal job at a major smartphone brand. Now he goes to some skilling institute. He told that, okay, I have been working for 5 years in this segment. If you want, you can test my skills, and based on that, you can give me a certificate that I am at 5 level or 6 levels. I should not be starting from level 1, right? So in the country, we have some trends which we can see that the prior skills are sometimes not recognized. And this is why, because employers always prefer degree holders rather than hands-on jobs people. So that is why, the government actually have worked on this over a period of time. We have so many government initiatives. Firstly, we have the umbrella mission. That is the Skill India mission, where we have so many initiatives. For example, we have within the same Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Kendras, right? Integration with general education, Jan Shikshan Sansthan, and so many other aspects such as PM Yuva scheme. So this is actually the umbrella policy, right? For any initiative in the country, there needs to be a policy. So this is a policy name. Now, we also have the Skill India Digital Hub, which is actually a mobile application where you have so many courses where you can actually download it and you can learn some skills on your particular convenience. Now, this will be, kind of assuring that you are having employment, entrepreneurship, skills, and so many other aspects. Also, one of the most important initiatives in the country, maybe, this is actually about the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Now, Kaushal Vikas Yojana is actually talking about the various skills that you need to learn on a short-term basis, and also the various skills which you had earlier known as the recognition of prior learning. That means that these are the skills which you have had from before, and you will be also be getting certificates based on that. Now, we have had phases of this, of the same from, Kaushal Vikas Yojana 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 and 4.0 recently. So we are trying to create more jobs in the AI sector and 5G skills and so on. So these are the various new age sectors that we are trying to have more jobs in by training the people, giving them certificates, and also trying to have them placed with various organizations. So this is where the private sector is also collaborating with the government on this scheme. Next, as told before, we have the National Apprentice Promotion Skill, where this is about on the job kind of internship that you can say. That center government will be giving around 20-25% of the stipend, and the same will be actually be collaborated with various local level MSMEs and small industries and so on. Next, we also have the National Skill Development Corporation, which is actually operating on a public-private partnership, and this is where we have various skills for various sectors, and this is where this is actually a kind of an organization operated by the both of the sectors to drive skill training in the country. Next, we also have the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushal Yojana. This is mainly about the training of rural youth. As you can see, as you have already seen in the data, that they are lagging behind. Next, we have the Sankalp initiative, which is from the World Bank, and also the Strive initiative, which is focusing mainly on the improvement in the industrial training institutes and various skilling opportunities from the marginalized sections of the population. We also have the PM Vishwakarma Yojana, mainly for the artisans and the craftspeople to hone their skills over a period of time. In the comments, you let me know 2 more skills which are important from this perspective. Also, in the comments, try to solve this 2018 PYQ based on actually the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Now, when we talk about the 6-point blueprint which is given in this article to adopt a structural reform approach or a way forward for this particular discussion, firstly, the authors are arguing for an industry-academia collaboration. That means we have to legally mandate via a law that there must be partnerships between colleges and industries, because otherwise the students are actually learning via rote learning and various other old educational methods, which is not translating into real-time jobs. Next, our education must be accountable. That means there must be accreditation systems similar to the model that we follow in the EU and even the Western countries, right, where we have various norms to categorize schools and their features. Next, we need to have more and more of the idea clubs, or say the tinker laboratories in the school. As you can see here, the students are hands-on learning various skills, right, and this is the best approach to teach in our schools, because practical education is much more needed than those books and the rote learning aspects. Next, we need to have more amount of soft skills plus languages, because across humanities, across subjects, it has been always seen that a student learns better in their mother tongue. So that is what we have to achieve, that there must be a mandatory norm across curriculum to have soft skills and languages. Soft skills can be focused both based on the communication skills, leadership skills, which are also important apart from the skills that you need in technology or in humanities and so on. Next, there must be international linkages, because Indians will in the future be going abroad for their job purposes. So global workforce skills must be integrated. And at the end of the day, just like the IAS, we also should be having the Indian Educational Service, which can cater specifically to the educational needs of the country. In this respect, you attempt this question, and now we'll be moving on to the next one. Another editorial from the Hindu, where this is talking about our carbon credit trading scheme. A very important topic which you have to keep in mind, mainly for your prelims examination and most importantly for the upcoming mains, because this kind of topics are in the news for the last 1 year, where India in 2023 actually set up the carbon trading emission platform scheme. Now, the authors are arguing that the carbon trading targets that we have in the country is inadequate to meet the 2030 goals or 2070 net zero goals, which are actually a part of our Panch Amrit. In the comments, you let me know what are the 5 targets that we have towards a climate change transition. Now, when we talk about the very basics, we have to start about the basics of carbon credit trading scheme. Now, imagine that there are 2 emitters. Now, emitter A is a car factory. Emitter B is actually a factory that produces pen. Now, you know that maybe over a period of time, that when emitter B is producing higher amount of pens, he is not maybe polluting too much, as opposed to the car factory, right, which is having a much more higher carbon footprint than the emitter B. So what happens that the government has told that, okay, let us have a limit of around 100 units of carbon dioxide that you can emit in a year. So as you can see that the real greenhouse gases emissions that is coming from the emitter B is lower, maybe at 80. So this emitter B is having 20 extra units of carbon dioxide that it did not pollute in 1 year. But on the other hand, the car factory actually polluted 120 units. Now the government has told that if you emit more than the prescribed target, you will have to pay some fines, or maybe to avoid those fines, to avoid those penal provisions, you buy this 20 extra credit from emitter B. Now the emitter A, which is producing cars, They are agreeing, okay, we will be buying the same. And emitter B is also happy that they will be getting now money for not polluting the environment. That is actually an incentive that is working in their favor. So based on this, as you know, wherever there is actually the exchange of good, money or goods and services, there has to be some markets. So the markets told that, okay, there should be one carbon credit, which means that this is equivalent to 1 ton of carbon dioxide that you can emit. So based on that, the market value of 1 ton of carbon dioxide will be calculated, and here this will be allowed to be traded as a permit on this carbon trading platform. So this was actually conceptualized for the very first time as a part of the Kyoto Protocol, right? And after that, we also introduced the same in the country, but that has not been able to continue over a period of time. And that is when recently India launched the carbon credit trading scheme, which is a totally revamped approach towards the same because of a 2023 initiative which tried to cover so many sectors. That means there would be so many emitters A, such as from the sectors of aluminium sector, cement, iron, steel, petrochemicals, refineries, pulp and paper, chlor-alkali, textiles. So around 8 sectors are covered as of now, and you can see the various examples. So that means that these companies will be subjected to any kind of emissions which they actually emit beyond their prescribed targets. Now, again, we have a question from 2023 which shows us the recent importance of the carbon markets from UP's perspective. So you let me know the answer in the comments, and here let me give you some of the brief initiatives that India has taken over a period of time to inaugurate its carbon trading in the country. Now firstly, we have discussed about the carbon credit trading scheme of 2023. Next, we have the green credit program. Now this green credit program will be looking at so many green initiatives underdone by the Indian government, or say the government of various states. So here, tree plantation, water initiatives, sustainable agriculture, waste management, air pollution reduction, mangrove conservation and restoration, a very important one for sequestrating carbon dioxide, eco-mark and sustainable building and infrastructure. So these all will be implemented in a phase wise, and initially 3 from the 8 sectors are under consideration as of now. And also we have to understand this year will be giving green credit to those companies who are involved in these activities. Next, from around 2008 to around 2010, 12, 14, we have had the PAT scheme recently, which was actually reported that this scheme is not operational, but while it was operational, it was dealing with the energy saving certificates. That means that there would be various companies who would be reducing their energy levels or energy consumption at their industries. So if they're able to reduce, they will be getting more and more amount of e-certs. If they're getting more amount of e-certs, they can exchange it for money, or they can actually trade that on some platform and get some loans or various obligations. Next, we also have the REC scheme, Renewable Energy Certificate. This is trying to promote more renewable energy. How? Actually, when we talk about the same, we need to have energy from the green sources such as renewable energy. Now here, when this renewable energy goes into the grid, this grid is also having the energy that we are getting from the traditional energy generation such as coal or gas, thermal power plants. Now, when we actually supply more of renewable energy generation, we need more funds, we need more amount of incentives. This is actually one of the ways which the government of India has told the private sector that, okay, if you are setting more renewable energy projects, you can link it with our power grid, and with every 1 megawatt hour, you will be getting one certificate. And if you are not getting certificate, you cannot actually claim the money that you are actually based on renewable energy, because this coal power plant or thermal power plants, based on fossil fuels, they will not be able to claim any renewable energy consumption, right? So the more amount of green energy you consume or you produce, the more amount of initiative that you will be getting under the REC, right? So this is where, the various objectives and the initiatives were. But when I turn back again to the carbon trading scheme in the country, basically as of now, we have around 8 sectors which are targeted. So right now when we talk about the targets, we need to actually understand how ambitious they are. So with these 8 sectors, we are targeting around 1.68 decline in emissions intensity, which is nothing but the total amount of carbon dioxide emissions that you are doing as a percentage of our GDP. So this is what we are trying to have on an annual basis from the time period of 2023 to 27. That means 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you multiply 5 into 1.68%, you will be getting the total target that we have to reduce within 5 years. Now, the 2030 NDC or nationally determined contributions, which are actually part of the Paris Climate Agreement, and also according to the Paris Climate Articles, the carbon trading scheme has been discussed within the same. And based on that agreement, we have our NDCs that we need to have 3.44% decline on full economy wide. That means we cannot only tell that we have declined pollution based on only these 8 sectors. Now the Paris Climate Agreement is telling that if you want to decline the same, you have to decline across the entire sectors of the economy, right? Now, when we talk about the same decline in manufacturing sector, we need around 2.53%. But the thing is here that the problem is that the targets are lagging behind India's climate goals. That means if you want to achieve, the amount of, say, carbon dioxide emissions intensity levels, that must be around as low as to around 45% from 2005 levels. As of now, we have decreased to only around 24%, right? And as of now, we have to reach around at an amount of 30% as of now. And again, when we talk about the share of non-fossil fuels in installed electricity capacity, which we have to reduce by around 50%, as of now, we have already reduced to around 41%. And when we talk about the building amount of carbon sink or afforestation, because more afforestation will be actually taking back the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So this is also something where the progress is not clear based on the earlier target, that is we have to create around 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide sinks. So this is where we have to understand even these targets are not enough to actually complete these NDC targets. Now, when we talk about this economy-wide targets, why these matter? Because on a sector level, according to the earlier PAT scheme, which was operational from around 2008 to around 2012-14, right? We actually have seen that emission intensity in around paper sector that increased, but in the overall sectors in say cement or aluminium, they decreased. Now, it actually talks about that at economy level, we have to gain efficiency because energy use per GDP output actually fell when we talk about the PAT scheme, right? So this means that already we earlier had the perform, achieve and trade initiative, which is similar to the carbon markets. But over a period of time, we have seen after the operation of the scheme, the economy-wide emissions have decreased. So this means that over a period of time, we need more amount of economy-wide sectoral initiative rather only based on 8 sectors. So that is why in the editorial, there are so many ways which have been mentioned as to how we can strengthen our own carbon trading scheme. So firstly, we have to learn from the European Union emission trading scheme. That means we should be having a gradual cap over these sectors and gradually we should be raising the caps. That means we should be restricting the emissions from those sectors. Also, based on that, we should be having a floor price, a minimum price, right? That must be charged with reference to the carbon credits. So that means this would be incentivizing those people in the green sector or people who are having less amount of pollution based industries. They will be initiated to actually have better amount of carbon dioxide credits. So this is where they can trade more for higher prices. Next, we also need a strong enforcement under the EU norm. The enforcement is very strict. There are strict penalties and fines. Next, we also have to improve our reporting standards, right? These are known as MRV. That means whatever the carbon dioxide emissions are being generated, we have to report it on a particular level. That is why we have to use technology and we have to build that infrastructure over a period of time. As of now, India does not have the same. Next, we also need to have a digital registry to prevent fraud, and also a very serious issue, which is the double counting of carbon credits. So this is also something which is unethical and should be avoided. Next, cross-border compatibility must be looked at from the perspective of European Union's carbon border adjustment mechanism, because this CBEM initiative of the EU, which India is not a part of, this is prescribing that only those goods and various other aspects will be imported to the European Union which are actually of low carbon footprint. So if Indian goods have to be exported to the EU tomorrow, we have to ensure that those goods are produced from clean energy sources. That means if I'm producing a car and I'm exporting the same to the European Union, I have to actually understand that the car factory should be having a renewable energy power source. That is when you will be compliant with the environmental norms. Next, we need better industry incentives such as tax benefits, investment support for green projects, rewards for early adopters, mainly to boost up investment in the sector and mainly to actually help the startups in this particular one. And at the end of the day, we have to broaden the scope, because when we talk about our coal power plants, right, this is actually generating power over a wide range of industries, and many industries are dependent on coal power plants. That is why we have to include the power sector also within those 8 sectors. We have to include the agricultural sector, we have to include the transportation sector in those particular sectors. That is when we will be able to achieve economy-wide emissions reduction. So this is where this topic is concluded. You practice this question in the comments, let me know the answer. Now we'll be moving on to the simplified articles. Guys, this article is talking about open natural ecosystems. We'll be discussing in great detail, but this is related to your prelims examination from the perspective of environmental ecology and also from the perspective of GS3 conservation. So let us look firstly at what are open natural ecosystems. If you can look at these landscapes, be it from the dunes in Jaisalmer, or shrubs at Sri Sailam, or savanna woodland at Kaimur. So these are all the variety of ecosystems in India that we are having. But we have to understand that these are open ecosystems. This means that we have very little or minimum amount of human interventions. And also, generally we have a common kind of a geographical feature, vegetation and flora and fauna feature across the region. For example, if I'm talking about the desert, in the Thar desert, we generally have the camels, the Indian gazelle, the cactus and so many other flora and fauna species, right? Also, from the grasslands perspective, for example, the Bunny grasslands, we have the great Indian bustard, we have so many other creatures, even we have so many of the nomadic tribal people living in there. But there is a common misconception that a desert is unproductive, that a grassland is a wasteland, right? Or an open woodland is not actually a forest, right? Because we have to understand these are ecosystems which have prevailed for thousands of years. And that is why they cannot be told as wastelands, because they have a particular service of ecosystem. Here, there are so many communities such as the tribal communities, nomad communities which are dependent on them for livelihood. So there are many misconceptions regarding these ecosystems simply because they are not too much important for human development. So this is actually a very negative impression of the same, because sometimes deserts are told as barren wastelands. But we have to keep in mind that these are ancient and resilient biomes. These are not only consisting of sands over hundreds of kilometers, but these are home to so many local creatures too. Also, grasslands are known as degraded forests, but this is also a misconception, because grasslands are independent ecosystems. If you look at the savanna grasslands in the African region, we can actually see so many amount of biodiversity. Even the same can be talked about in Indian perspective, right? Next, wastelands are useless. This is also some amount of misconception, because any kind of ecosystem and the soil is actually very important for the overall global environmental concerns, because soil is a very important resource when we talk about storing carbon dioxide and preventing it from escaping into the atmosphere, because if it does, it will again increase global warming, because carbon dioxide is actually global warming gas. So soil is holding them together. And if we talk about these lands as wastelands, that means we will be using them according to our will, and we'll be releasing this CO2 into the atmosphere, leading into more global warming, leading into more negative impacts of the climate change. Next, forests, plantations are also sometimes talked about as ecological recovery. That means if we do more afforestation, the ecology will drastically and magically recover. But that is incorrect, because it depends on the type of trees you grow, and also it depends on how you are afforesting a particular region. Because according to various recent studies, it has been seen that many tree planting drives by companies, by the government, is actually harming the local biodiversity and the water availability in the region. Because if you are planting some tree which is not suitable to the local environment, it will take up more resources than it is optimally suited for, and actually leads to more harm than good. So that is why classifying these ecosystems as wastelands leads to industrial conversion, because generally we have this thing in mind that if this is a wasteland, we can easily convert it into some industries which can actually help our human development over a period of time. But if we do the same, it will be leading to pollution, more amount of CO2 released from the soil, and water pollution, and so on. Also, when we treat them as wastelands, we mainly use it for human habitation or human purposes, and we try to fence it. But when you are fencing a grassland, you are depriving of the local nomads and their cattle of the grasses, because they actually graze those grasses for their lives and livelihood. Next, also, if you try to treat some land as wasteland, you cut down the trees, or you do not focus too much about their conservation. So you are also leading to decline of the endemic species, the local species. Also, you are neglecting the soil carbon, and at the end of the day, you are also doing afforestation just in the sake of environment, but that is actually harmful. And according to a recent study from 2023, you can see that these one natural ecosystem, right, these are actually spread across the entire country, be it the sparsely vegetated region, open savanna, or the shrub savanna, or so the various amounts of other kind of lands. We have so many amounts of open natural ecosystems. This means that we have huge amount of potential to be used them for environmental purposes, for local community purposes. That is why this article is talking about what should be done. Firstly, we should stop calling them wastelands. So the first problem in your lives, also in our life, is to actually realize what we are doing wrong. This is what we are doing wrong. Second, we have to recognize open ecosystem in policy. We have to legally mandate, we have to legally classify them as grasslands, as deserts, and we have to give them proper protection status. Right? Next, we also have to support the pastoralists, because we have to understand that these are the local people who are dependent on those ponds, on those wetlands, even on some local species such as the Great Indian Bustard. You can mention the IUCN status of the Great Indian Bustard in the comments, but they are actually extremely marginalized and they are on the brink of extinction. And these local people in the region of the Great Indian Bustard, they are trying to preserve them, because this is actually also very culturally important for them. So, be it the land rights, be it the access or the recognition of their various livelihoods, we have to do the same. Also, we must be trying to promote nature-based restoration. That is, if we are trying to restore some grassland which has been degraded, and right now people till them as wastelands, we have to restore it via rotational grazing. Right? Let grass grow a little, then we graze it again. Then for 1 month we will be leaving it alone. Then again we can do grazing. Next, we should be also trying to do water harvesting, and also we'll be trying to have a rewilding of the natural ecosystem. That is, we should be planting those shrubs, those trees which are locally suited for them. Right? Next, we have to amend the afforestation schemes because one site fits all. For example, say if I thought about 1 or 2 tree species that I will be using to afforest the entire of India, that is not correct. We have to pick the suitable local tree species, and then only we should be having an ecosystem approach, not a one size fits all approach. And at the end of the day, June 17 must be renamed as Land Degradation Day, not as Desertification Day, because desertification from a climate change perspective is focusing on, those lands which have degraded from their previous glory. If you are giving that degraded land or tag, we will be having, more amount of wasted kind of misconceptions. That is why we should be talking about the Land Degradation Day directly. So this is where this topic is. Now we'll be moving on to the next one. According to an eminent expert, the recent census 2027 enumeration should also be including the various local tribes and also most of the primitive tribes in the country, including the Jarawas from the Andaman Islands. Now this is a perspective which we have to talk about from the GS2 topic here, that is welfare schemes for the vulnerable sections of the population, because this is where the topic of particularly vulnerable tribal groups comes into picture. Now, in the comments you tell me about the constitutional features related to tribal populations in the country. But you know that they are constitutionally protected when we talk about their rights. So when we talk about the entire tribal sections of the population in the country, there are a specific population which belong to the scheduled tribes. Further, there is a particular section which we know as the PVTGs. Now the PVTGs are those tribal populations which amount to around 75 in the entire country. These are those populations where their level of technology, literacy, economic activity, social structure and lifestyle is extremely primitive. Based on various commissions and their recommendations, it has been commonly agreed that PVTGs are those classes of populations of some tribals who are untouched by modern human lifestyles and isolated from the mainstream population. Their level of technology is pre-agricultural, that is hunting and gathering. Also, their literacy levels are extremely poor. You can say that they are actually non-existent. Also, with reference to economic activities, they are at subsistence level. That means they consume whatever they are producing. Also, their lifestyle is nomadic, semi-nomadic or forest dwelling. Now, the origin of the PVTGs can be traced back to 1960 from the recommendation of the Deepen Commission, which actually looked into so many tribal groups and their backwardness. And this is where in 1975, the government classified around 52 tribals as PTGs. Later, in 2006, it was renamed as PVTGs. Now, there are so many government schemes, as you can see here, across the India. We have so many states, mainly the state of Odisha is having the largest group of PVTGs, followed by various other states. And that is why we have a scheme known as the development of the PVTGs, which is having a fund of around 24,000 crore, where basic facilities such as roads, telecom, electricity will be provided to them. And also, we have the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, which is actually an umbrella kind of scheme, which is, the government's guarantee to ensure basic services such as clean drinking water, safe housing, sanitation, education, health, road, telecom, and so many other things. This was actually on the occasion of the Janjatiya Gaurav Divas that this scheme was launched. And here, these schemes and so many other schemes will be helping the government in the upcoming census 2027. Now the government have been doing so many health initiatives, also infrastructural initiatives such as the Andaman Road, which is actually helping the local populations of the tribals to reach the local markets and have integration with the mainstream population. So, according to various experts, it is reported that now the census will be incorporating their population also. And over a period of time, mainly with the Jarawa groups, the government has increased and established trust between themselves because of government initiatives, because of employment scaling initiatives. The government has also roped in various satellite imagery over a period of time. It has actually talked about mapping and delivering the PDAs and so many other initiatives to the last level. So we also have some data to look upon them, and obviously at the end of the day we have so many schemes such as the Pradhan Mantri Jan Man Yojana. We also have the Janjatiya Gaurav Divas, which is a special occasion. You can let me know after whom this occasion is celebrated for. Also, the Vikshit Bharat Sankalp Yojana and the PM PVTG mission, which we discussed earlier. These are all the things that we have to keep in mind, which will be helping us give the data for the same. And also, according to Dr. Kar, who is actually a very noted physician examining the Jarawa population, so he has estimated that around 1998 there were 260 individuals. But the census 2011, they enumerated them to be at around 380, and we are right now expecting the same from the Ministry of Tribal Affairs data that they are at around 647. So their population is increasing. That is why we need more targeted benefits. That is why we need to incorporate them in the next census. So that is what brings me to this 2018 PYQ. So you solve this in the comments and let me know what is the answer. On to the next one. Guys, in the next one, we will be looking into how India can actually repay the debt that it has taken during the Green Revolution. Now, this debt is not something that India must be too much worried about, but from an ethical perspective, we should be trying to help that person who helped when we were actually needing the help to the most extent level. So this is where we have to talk about the recent actions of the Donald Trump administration in scraping the aid or say the grants or say the support, financial support that it gave to USAID, which runs so many important welfare schemes for US and also for the rest of the world. So India actually benefited from the same back in 1960s when we started the Green Revolution. So we'll be looking from that perspective here, because this is extremely important for the Indian agricultural aspect because of the mains and also from the prelims perspective. Now, when we talk about the various stakeholders who helped India in our Green Revolution, we cannot ignore MS Swaminathan, that all of us know, right? That, MS Swaminathan actually was the most important individual, most important Indian when we talk about the Green Revolution in the country. In the comments, you let me know some of his key initiatives that he has taken, which helped India transform from a food deficient nation to a food surplus nation. But now we are here to talk about some other important individuals. Here we also cannot ignore Norman Borlaug, who is known as the father of Green Revolution. Then we have Gurdev Singh Khush, who is also a very important agricultural economist and expert in this field, and also Sanjaya Rajaram. This is where these three individuals, including MS Swaminathan, they have actually talked about how the Green Revolution was successfully implemented. Now, we also have the institutions such as the CIMMYT, which the full form is actually in Mexican, but the headquarters of the same is at Mexico, and this is actually a very important organization who supported us in the high yielding variety seeds of wheat, such as the varieties will be Lerma, Royo, Sonoria and Mayo, right? Also the IRRI, which is actually a very important institute for promoting rice varieties at Philippines. They have also supplied the same with reference to semi-dwarf rice varieties such as IR8, IR36 and 64. And also, during that time, during 1950s and 60s, US aid was actually very instrumental in supplying the same of wheat and rice varieties to the Indian country and also to various other developing economies, because this was actually a part of their Cold War strategy that they should not be allowing any country to be food deficient. Otherwise, it was seen that due to extreme poverty levels back in 1950s and 60s, countries transitioned towards communist regimes, right? So this was actually one of the Cold War strategies. Also, India benefited a lot out of this particular initiative. But recently, it was actually receiving on an annual basis a funding of around $83 million, which was shut down by Donald Trump administration. And India is having the new responsibility to support its workings and functionings, because in 1960s, when this organization helped India to become self-sufficient, it is now our responsibility to actually spear it forward. Because when we talk about the organization right now, it is actually talking about delivering global food security through wheat and maize and various other varieties of say crops. Mainly, when we talk about the maize and wheat, we are talking about genetic diversity, sustainable practices that this particular organization is promoting. Also, the impact will be that it is developing climate resilient varieties, and also this organization is accounting for 50% of the maize and wheat in low and middle income countries. That means these are the global south countries, with India is actually looking to become a leader or a Vishwa Guru of. So if India wants to do the same, India must be helping in this particular mission, because we cannot forget the role of CIMMYT and IRRI in this so many varieties, or say so many amounts of output in this agricultural sector. We have the Kalyan Sona, Sonalika, Lama Royo, Sona 64. We also have these varieties of rice. You can actually note the name downs, because these are actually very important for your prelims examination. And also 90% of India's basmati rice can be indirectly be attributed to these organizations. Also, look at the figures with reference to traditional varieties and the HYVs from these organizations. Just look at the growth level from 1960s to the present times in both respect. You can see the traditional varieties are lagging behind. So that is why it is our responsibility that we should be having a strategic collaboration with these organizations. Firstly, we have so many agricultural innovations within the country. For example, recently at Hyderabad, we have new varieties of drought resistance crops. So that is why we can actually promote the same via funding to these organizations, right? By promoting more heat and drought resistance, by sharing our own technology. Also, in India, we see that we have higher nitrogen use efficiency. As you can also see here, that a lot of money goes for the fertilizer subsidy, and also we are mainly dependent on the imports. So if we try to have more amount of research in friendlier varieties, climate friendly varieties, that is where we can decrease the nitrogen usage. Also, in India, we have also the first genome edited rice variety, right? So this is where we have to actually increase the technological transfer from India to the rest of the world. And also at the end of the day, there are so many AI tools which are being used right now in breeding, right? So that can actually help us fast tracking the release of varieties to the markets, correct? We have so many instances where we are actually having less water, more rice varieties. So these are all the initiatives that India should be promoting via funding at this organization. So this is what this article is all about now. On to the next one. This article from the Indian Express is reporting regarding the IPO boom in 2025. So we'll be firstly learning about the very basics about the IPO boom. Firstly, when we talk about the initial public offering, imagine a simple scenario that you have a company of yourself. Now, using money from your friends, family members, even from the local bank, you have somehow tried to expand the business of your company. Now imagine that you want to open some new factories in the state of Karnataka, or in Jammu and Kashmir, or in Gujarat. So this means that you are trying to expand your business. So generally, when firms try to expand their business operations, they take further loans from big banks. And if they want to improve their funding, they can also take the money from people like us, right? So where this thing you have to keep in mind, that if you want to expand your company like this, you can also list your company at the stock market, because at the stock market there are so many players like people like me, or there is other big investors who can actually look at your company, who can look at your company's revenues, losses, new investments, and further other plannings. And based on that, we can all make the decision to invest in your company. So this is exactly what we know as initial public offering. That means for the initial time, for the first time, when you are trying to make your company publicly listed on the stock market and you are trying to offer your shares there, that is actually known as IPO. So here, this is IPO when you are actually a private company and you are selling your shares to the public and you are listing it to the stock exchange by filing a particular document known as the red herring prospectus with the SEBI. What this red herring prospectus will be? This will be having the company background, financials, promoters details, purpose of expansion, purpose of fundraising, risks and various potential litigations and the various terms of issues. So these are all technical terms that you have to convey to your stock market or financial sector regulator SEBI. Now SEBI will be reading everything here. Then SEBI will be trying to approve your IPO. But it will not be setting the price. The price will be set by your own aspect mainly. Whenever your company will be listed with the stock market, it will be partnering with a very big bank. These are known as the merchant banker, or these are also sometimes known as investment banks, right? Which actually one of the most important services of them is to help the companies with their IPOs. So based on this, they will be discussing the price and the share and opening to the public. And here, at the stock market, this will be open for around 3-4 days. So for 3-4 days, people like you and me and everyone else will be having the time to buy your IPO. And then again after 2-3 days, this will be allotted and the shares will be given in your demat account. Demat account is actually the account that you have with the stock broker. This can be your brokers like the Grow or say ICICI market applications and so on, right? And then it will be listed to the stock exchange. So this have so many benefits. Firstly, it can help you to raise money. It will be helping, the various insiders to access funds, the company insiders to access more funds, also to gain credibility, because if you are listed to the stock market, you are a very popular company at the end of the day. And also it will be increasing brand awareness, and also good talent from the market will be able to and willing to work at such companies. So here, when we talk about the various other types of IPOs, mainly we have the one which we know as fresh issue. For the very first time, your company is being listed to the stock exchange. This is when your company will be selling the shares. Next, we also have something which we know as OFS, or offer for sale, where there can be some international companies who are listing in India for the first time. They can also do an IPO, or there is a company known as the LIC, which also listed in around 2020, 21, 22, where the promoters or the investors got the money because they listed in the stock market, and people like us got the shares. So mainly the eligibility criteria is that your net tangible assets, physical assets, must be around 3 crore for the past 3 years. Net worth must be 1 crore over around 3 years. Also pre-tax profit, right, would be around say 15 crore for around 3 of the last 5 years, and market capitalization must be around 100 crores. So this is where you can see India topped the global IPO charts in 2024. India is the first rank at around 326 companies filing for IPOs. And also in 2025, as you can see, these many companies starting from LG, Jio, Grow, Boat, Zepto, Flipkart, and so many other companies such as JSW Steel, they're all talking about listing here. Why? Because the GDP growth is actually at a very comfortable level. Economy is growing. People are demanding more goods and services. They are also seeing better demand. Also, GST collection over a period of time, it is also increasing. Next, inflation is actually very low, right? At around 2.8 to a 6-year low. That means people are actually having more money to spend, right? Their money value is not been degraded, right? Also, the interest rates are actually at a very low rate, right? Around 5.5%. That means banks can give more loans and we can actually invest more, and this can also improve the GDP of the country more, which can again help the people to spend more on these companies. And the stock market in the recent times, it has also rebounded since April 2025. So it seems to be one of the best times to file for the IPOs. But there are some challenges and risks which you have to keep in mind. Firstly, there are some 18 IPOs which are delayed. Why? Because their valuations, or say the market supply, forces of demand and supply of the prices are not being clear as of now. Also, there is a particular gray market, which means that before an IPO is listed,
there are so many experts and other people which speculate what would be the return or what will be the actual say price when that particular IPO will be listed, right? Because generally it has been seen that good IPOs list at higher the price. So that is why many investors actually talk about investing in the IPOs via the grey market. First, they know about the premium and then they talk about buying the IPO in the real or say the first place. Also, the market correction has been in place. That means the market is extremely volatile. It has corrected around 20% post September 2024. That means the market is still not at a good place. And also, there are some companies who are just waiting for better market conditions. So this is what you have to keep in mind for this article. And now on to the last one. India joined the military exercise Talisman Sabre in Australia. Now, in prelims in recent times, there have been so many PYQs that pertained to these kind of exercises. Now, India recently joined this Talisman Sabre 2025 exercise, where this is one of the largest multinational military exercises actually spearheaded by Australia and the US. It will be held for around 3 weeks from now and across Australia, Papua New Guinea, and this will be the first time this country will be participating. Also, the participants will be 19 nations including India, Japan, France, UK, South Korea, right? And the main key aspects here will be high intensity warfare simulation, all the factual information that you need here based on land, sea, air and cyber warfare, also a very important one to be noted for prelims. Also, largest ever in Australia will be participating here, around 35,000 troops. Also, India's role here will be with reference to amphibious. That means those aircraft which actually can land on waters also. Also, air combat and maritime operation India is focusing on. And new additions will be so many other missiles and helicopters and new sensitive equipments. Now, the main thing that we have to keep in mind are the various other exercises. So pause my screen or you can also look at it in the handout. The various exercises India is having with reference to its army, air force and navy, right? So we all have these countries, and with these countries we are having the exercises. You have to know the names and the participating countries in this manner. So with reference to this, we have reached the end of the discussion. I thank you all for being a very patient audience. Please do attempt the quiz which is following up. Till we meet again, all the best and best of luck. Thank you.